everybody. Today in this new sort of mini tutorial, I'm going to be showing you how to draw this piece of lovely sea glass here. I'm going to be drawing this whole image, but just for this video I'm going to be focusing on this piece of sea glass here in the middle. I wanted to do a tutorial on this just because, well, firstly I was just really excited to draw it. There's so many lovely colours in this. But I also just thought it might be quite helpful because of the texture of the sea glass. Obviously it's very smooth like a pebble, and it's if you look at sea glass, it's almost sort of misty, and I wanted to sort of try and capture that. So we've got this big highlight in the middle here, and this highlight is what makes the sea glass look sort of wet. So I just want to sort of show you really how to get that nice texture in this tutorial. So this is the reference that I'm going to be working from. I'll link the reference in the description below as well. So to start with, I've created the outline obviously for the whole image that I'm going to be drawing, and I've just begun just before I started filming to just map in some of the sort of darkest areas surrounding the sea glass, just so I could get the shape in there and I could sort of begin working on the middle of it. So I just sort of mapped out these sort of like the darkest chunks sort of all around the sea glass. I used a polychromos dark sepia for that. And then if you have a look at the reference, there's a reflection on the pebbles underneath the sea glass. And for that, I used the Pablo Emerald Green very lightly. And then I went over that with the Luminance Middle Verdigris, I think it is. And just sort of burnished that a little bit. But yeah, so now we can just go straight into the centre here and start actually working on the sea glass. So I've created my little chart that I always create. If you want to see sort of how I colour match and sort of create one of these little charts, there's a whole video on my channel about that. So it might be worth taking a look at that one. But anyway, for now I'm just going to go straight in. So I've got my chart ready here, and oh, I might actually just tape it. No, I won't tape it. Anyway, so I'm going to go in with, let's have a look. Probably the Pablo Emerald Green. Okay, so I want to start just very lightly mapping out sort of the biggest sections really. Obviously we've got this big highlight in the middle. I'm just going to erase my graphite stencil a little bit more. Try and keep your rubbers clean, unlike me, because they can start to mark your page a little bit if you don't keep them clean. So I can still see that, but there's not a lot of graphite on there anymore. So a nice sharp pencil, and I'm going to go in with the Pablo Emerald Green and just begin to map out the darkest areas. Actually, not quite the darkest areas for this piece. The darkest areas are sort of here. I'm more beginning to map out the mid-tones actually, just to get the shape in there. So nice sharp pencil, again this is the Pablo Emerald Green, and I'm just going to begin to very lightly just map out the shape of the top of the sea glass. It's a really lovely piece of sea glass actually. It's so smooth, and it's sort of rounded off at the top like a pebble. So I also want to, if you have a look at the reference, there's this sort of darker band around here that goes around the highlight. So I'm avoiding the area where the highlight is, and I'm just going to map out this sort of darker section at the top. I'm being really light with my pencil here because I don't want it to be sort of a vibrant green, I want this as a bit of a base layer, then I'm going to put some of the sort of blues over the top of this. So yeah, I'm just being very light with this Pablo Emerald Green, and I'm just mapping in that darker area. Now, the highlight in this piece, as I was saying a minute ago, you can sort of tell that the piece of sea glass is wet in the photograph. Now that's because this highlight in the middle here, the line around the edge of the highlight is quite sort of sharp. There isn't a lot of a gradient. There isn't a lot of gradient between the darkest area here and then the highlight. It just sort of jumps straight from dark to light. There's no sort of gradient blending out the two. So keeping that in there is what's going to make this look wet, and it's going to sort of get that texture in there. So I'm using just circular motions with my pencil so that I can really, in later stages, sort of nicely blend everything together. And again, I'm being super, super light at the minute as well. So I'm just getting in that line at the bottom of the highlight. You do have a smooth gradient if we just look at the reference for a minute. So here, so it goes from a sort of a mid-tone green into a blue, and that's a really lovely gradient there. But as I was saying a second ago, there's a very sort of distinctive line here that breaks up the sort of darker mid-tony section here with the highlight, and getting that in, and also these sort of fairly sort of sharp details around here, getting those in there, and this sort of sharp line here, that's what's going to make your drawing look, sort of have that wet texture. So just back into the drawing now, still using the same Pablo. And I'm going to begin to sort of hint at that gradient a little bit. So I'm going to darken this area up just slightly, and then sort of fade it out on the edges here. And I'm going to about halfway, so from the line which is the highlight to the end of the sea glass here, I want this green to sort of fade to nothing at about the halfway point. So if you've seen some of my other tutorials, you'll probably know by now that I like to sort of build up my drawings with base layers, and then I sort of add the detail more towards the end. So that's what I'm doing at the minute. I'm just creating a base layer, a very light base layer, getting all of the colours and the tones in the right places, and then we can start to really burnish, fill in the tooth of the paper a little bit more, and add that detail as well. You may sort of look at this reference and initially think there's not a lot of detail in this. It's very subtle, but I wouldn't be tempted to just sort of colour it in, you know, sort of pick a green for around here and then a blue for the highlight, because just going back to the reference quickly, even in the highlight there's so much to it. So you have the sort of the lightest section here, and it's broken up into all different colours, which again, I think these sort of like little breaks in the highlight is the reflection from the sky. So having that in there again is going to make it sort of look like it's like a wet piece of glass laying on a beach. So yeah, and even here, look, there's these sort of like lines here. So there's so much detail that we can add to this piece. And the more detail that you can pick out and add, the more realistic the final piece is going to look. And if you have a look at the reference as well, the lines, especially sort of around here, it's not just like a straight line around the highlight. There's little sort of bumps and little lines that come off it, and I just want to get those in as well. Just going to almost sort of like hint at the detail in this section. I don't want to add too much of it yet. And then I just want to actually fill very lightly this whole area with this emerald green. So we're going to have a really nice green base layer to build on. Now, if you look very closely at the reference, obviously we've got this lovely sort of turquoise blue here, but if you really zone in, there's almost a bit of a green line, very sort of blended. So don't be tempted to just draw a really sharp line in there. But I do want to get that in, so I'm just going to almost lightly sketch it in. Okay, so we've got the first colour in there. So let's now add some of this nice turquoise. Let me have a look. So I'm going to use the Luminance. I'm going to use the Luminance Light Malachite Green for this. It's a perfect colour, I would say. And using circular motions again, I'm just going to very lightly sort of sketch in and fill in this whole area. And then I'm also going to just start to go up into the Pablo Emerald Green that we've just put down as well. And just begin to blend those two together. Okay, so now we're left with the just the highlight section in the middle. Now, I see quite often when there's a highlight, a lot of people will just be sort of tempted to leave it just completely white, because you just sort of think, oh, well, it's the highlight, so I'll sort of leave that a bright white. But if you have a look at the reference, the only section that's white in this highlight is this tiny little sort of dot up here. And even that, there's the slightest bit of white in there, but all of this is all different colours. This bright blue, I think, is the sort of reflection of the sky above when this picture was taken. So I really want to sort of try and capture that nice blue colour. I considered using a different pencil just because I can't pronounce what this is called, but it's a really good colour match. So I'm going to go for it. So this is the Luminance Chrysocolor Blue. This one, number 671 anyway. So yeah, I'm going to use this one. Okay, and I'm just going to, so we have sort of a greener section in the middle. Do you know what? I'm going to put this aside for 1 minute and I'm going to jump in with the Pablo Emerald Green again, and very, very lightly this time. I just want to add a little bit of green to this middle section here before I go in with that Luminance Blue. So let me just add that quickly. And then there's a little bit up here as well. Okay, so now I am going to go over the top of that with the Chrysocolor. I really don't know what that says. Anyway, I'm going to go in with this pencil, and then very lightly I just want to fill in the rest of this sort of highlight section. I am actually going to leave, have a look at your reference, and there's, I'll show you one here. So there's sort of the darker section of the highlight, which starts here and then goes right down to the bottom. I only want to, so far, just go up to that line there. And the line's quite bumpy, so I want to sort of follow the shape of that line. But don't use a hard pressure and don't sort of just draw a big sharp line. I'm just sketching it in and being quite sort of loose with my pencil. Yeah, so up to there, and then I'm just gonna sort of sketch very lightly, get this colour down in here. Where's it gone? Ah, this one. The luminance middle verdigris. It's sort of like a very light green, and then quite sort of desaturated as well. So I want to add that to the top section of the highlight. Okay, so now I want to start adding some of the darkest tones. So these sort of areas up here. And then that sort of matches over there slightly as well. So I'm going to use the Light Fast, and this is a Derwent Light Fast. I don't use these very often. So if you don't use Light Fast, this is just dark turquoise. So just sort of any dark turquoisey colour that you can find in your pencil collection. I do like the Derwent Light Fast. I don't use them that often, probably because I just don't have that many of them. But they are nice. Okay, so I'm going to start to add some of this detail. Okay, so I'm now going to start to blend and burnish a little bit more. I'm going to go back in with the Pablo Emerald Green and I want to sort of focus on this area here. I'm just going to completely ignore that highlight for now. So if you have a look at your reference, underneath this highlight here, it goes from emerald green and then there's a really nice smooth gradient that I will be using the luminance light malachite green for. So I just want to, again, I keep saying it, but using small circular motions with my pencil, using sort of a medium pressure now, I'm going to have sort of a fairly sort of dark small band of the Pablo Emerald Green under the highlight, and then I want to just blend and blend using lots of light layers into the luminance light malachite green. So yeah, I'm just going to focus on that area for the time being. Okay, so now I'm going to go in with the luminance light malachite green. I am going to now use quite a hard pressure with this pencil to just really fill the tooth of the paper. I'm going to start from the outside, use quite a hard pressure, and then as it goes more sort of into the middle here, I am going to still use, I'd say, sort of like a medium pressure. But I'm just going to sort of like fade it out a little bit so that hopefully then these two should merge together. I am going to go over the emerald green that we've just done. And yeah, so I'm thinking now, so that should sort of blend everything together. So I want a nice sharp pencil, and again, I am using a fairly hard pressure now. In with the Pablo Emerald Green, and I just want to make this little sort of green line around the outside a little bit more obvious. Okay, and then I'm also going to go back in to sort of the very edge of this highlight, and I'm just going back in and sort of darkening up these areas a little bit more. Okay, I also want to add a bit more green up here as well. So I'm going to go in with this one, the Chrysocolla Blue. I'm probably saying that completely wrong, but I'll just go with it. And I'm going to, as I say, burnish this highlighted area a little bit more now. Because, as I say, this highlight isn't white, except for that very small dot right in the top corner. Okay, so I'm going to now go in with the Pablo Sapphire Blue, and very lightly, almost a bit of a glaze with this colour, I'm just going to add some of this nice blue tone to this section up here. Okay, so I'm going to go in with the Luminance Light Malachite Green for this top section. And I'm also going to move up to this lighter area as well that we haven't really done too much work on yet. And now, because we've darkened up this section, we've sort of lost that line here. So I'm going to go back in with the watercolour blue, the luminance blue, and then just burnish this area more just to add that area back in. Okay, so now that this area has been burnished, I'm going to lightly glaze over just this middle section with the Pablo Emerald Green. Just again, to give it that sort of green hue. Just very subtle. It might not even pick up, it's picking up slightly on the camera. With this lovely middle verdigris luminance. As I said before, it's just a really light sort of greyed out green colour. And I just want to now burnish this area before we then go over the top with the darkest colour, which was the light fast dark turquoise. A little bit around here as well. And also, in fact, before I burnish that bit, I'm going to just very lightly add some Polychromos Sky Blue. Actually filling this whole section because I'm going to use an electric eraser to get rid of some of this as well, just for the sort of whitest highlight. So yeah, I've sort of added a base of that sky blue, and then I'm going back in with the middle verdigris luminance, and then just filling all of that in now. Probably back in with that sky blue over the top, just in this very top section. Just adding a little bit more Pablo green and Pablo Emerald Green, sorry, to this. Okay, so now let's start to add some of the darkest colours. So I'm going back in with my light fast dark turquoise. Now I do want my pencil nice and sharp for this bit. Okay, and I'm just going to start to add, let's have a look at the reference quickly. These sort of darkest details, I'm going to darken up this section as well, and then sort of around here. So I'm going to add those now. Okay, and then I'm just gonna glaze over that with the emerald green, the Pablo. And then burnish some of the lightest areas with this middle verdigris luminance. If you have a look at your reference, there's almost sort of light patches in this area, like little circles, and I'm just sort of burnishing those in. And then I'm also going to glaze slightly with the watercolour blue luminance, just slightly, just to get that blend a little bit more. Okay, there we go. So now I'm going to go in with my electric eraser. You might have noticed as I was sort of drawing, I was ignoring all of these sort of fine details around here because I intended on going back in with the electric eraser and then just sort of like lifting the pigment and adding those details in with the eraser rather than sort of trying to have your pencil sort of work around them. I prefer to just sort of pretend that they're not there, colour over them and then erase them with an electric eraser. So I'm also going to add this top highlight here as well. Okay, so now that we've added these highlights in, I'm going to go back over them. If you look at the reference, these highlights here aren't white, they're just a very sort of light green, so they're a lot more blended in the reference. So I'm going to go back in now with the middle third degree luminance and then just sort of colour those in and blend them a little bit more. They'll still be nice sort of strong highlights, but I just want to push them back a little bit. I don't want them to be bright white highlights. I'm also going to just go over them slightly with the light malachite green luminance as well, actually. Now this one I am going to keep white, so I mean I'm using the Caran d'Ache Supracolor white. It's a really nice sort of soft white, but then you can still sharpen the pencil to get quite a nice point. Obviously, if you don't use these pencils, you can just sort of use whatever white you do have. But yeah, I've recently started using these Caran d'Ache Supracolors and I really like them. They're very similar to the luminance, but I'd say that to me they feel a little bit softer. So they're really good to use for sort of things like this to blend. Because I'm just going to blend some of this white over the top of this highlight here. Blend that up. And then I'm going to blend these highlights out a little bit more as well. Okay, and then just to finish off, I just want to add a few sort of glazes really. So I'm going back in again with the Pablo Emerald Green. And I'm just sort of glazing all over this section, just to really saturate it so it's a lovely, bright, vibrant colour. And then I'm going to go in with the Chrysocolla Blue Luminance and just go back into this area a little bit, not too much. I'm sort of just glazing over and then glaze back over this highlight as well. Okay, so I think I'm going to leave that there for this tutorial. If you enjoyed that and if you found it useful, please subscribe to my channel. I upload a lot of sort of colour pencil content, a lot of colour pencil tutorials and that sort of thing.